It's Courtney, everybody.
Hi.
Courtney, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, Courtney, what true crime, nasty murder situation have you brought us this week?
I know. I went back and forth on stories all weekend. There's a lot of murder right now.
Yeah, there is,
as
sadly.
There usually is, yeah. And especially with all of the streaming platforms really leaning into that genre and making documentaries about different stories. But
what is it? The hot one is the...
There's The Watcher, which is on Netflix. And then there's Killer Sally, which I was going to cover because it's in the top 10 in the U.S. on Netflix.
Right.
But this story was featured on 2020 on Friday, and it's just really interesting. There's kind of a big twist in it that you don't usually hear. So
Well,
I
Courtney,
thought I would
please,
cover that
share
story.
that. Share that.
Yeah.
Does it have a title? I know all these murder stories have some kind of title, you know.
I'm glad you asked because the title to this one was Divine Intervention. So there's an aspect to this around faith. But some of the people inside of it were calling it a God incident instead of a coincidence, which I knew you would really like. So
All right.
thought I would mention that as well.
Yeah.
But my sources for this were ABC's 2020. So this aired on Friday if anybody's interested in
This
seeing
is
this
a word
episode.
from the Lord, and he's not happy.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The New York Post, The Sun, and Fox News. So the gentleman I'm going to be speaking about is Earl Arthur Olander. And on Saturday, April 11th in 2015, police went to investigate a property. It was around 7 o'clock at night, and they were contacted by Earl's neighbor who said that family could not reach him by phone. When the police arrived, they found that Earl was dead inside of the home. His hands had been tied behind his back, and he had been beaten to death. Earl was a 90-year-old lifelong bachelor and farmer who owned and ran a profitable family farm.
By the way, shout out to a 90-year-old bachelor. Yeah.
I also knew that you would like that part.
Right.
Exactly. And he lived on 160 acres in what was called San Francisco Township of Carver County in rural Minnesota. And so he's this profitable farmer. In fact, he's still baling hay at the age of 90, and he's selling it every week. He was known as a stand-up person and a wonderful role model by his friends and neighbors. Someone went so far as to say he had never said a curse word in his life. So really also a very religious man. And there was no cause, or really no one could think of anyone that would have a grudge or a reason to kill Earl. So it was somewhat particular and strange that this would happen to Earl. As for the property and the crime, so the house was completely ransacked. It was very clear that the intruders had gone in with the sole purpose of burglarizing the home and then ultimately killing Earl. There were very few clues inside the home and around the crime scene. No DNA was found anywhere. And with the exception of 3 different shoe prints from the assailants, there was nothing else found. And those shoe prints were an Adidas shoe print, an Avia shoe print, I think you call it.
Right.
And then a Croc shoe print.
Wow.
Which is a very specific
Odd
shoe
combination
to
of
wear
people.
to a murder.
It's easy to wipe the blood off your Crocs.
That's true.
Plastic shoes, you just kind of hose them down. Done.
Yeah.
Are we speaking from
That's right.
experience? Tim?
Well, you know.
Ooh,
I'm just- yeah, exactly.
idea, but it just might work.
Yeah, you may want to wear your Crocs to the next one.
Yeah,
Okay.
So
So it was the Adidas, the
Avia, and then the
Avia,
Crocs.
but yeah.
Okay.
Very specific. Earl, as a 90-year-old bachelor and as someone who's running a family farm, he was worth millions, but you would not have known that. He had no credit cards. He had no bank cards. He had no cell phone. So when the family was trying to get a hold of Earl, it was through a landline. But he was worth millions. And again, despite not flaunting it, people sort of knew that he had money, and he was a huge contributor to the church. So there was, I think, not rumors, but there was this sort of, people knew that some farmers didn't trust banks, and so they kept a lot of cash on their properties. And so
So people at the church knew that he had a lot of money.
People at the church knew, I think, and some in the community.
I'm trying to put together a theory here.
But
aren't
what would have
people at the
happened?
church supposed to be the good people?
Well, I mean, sometimes.
This is a word from the
buying
Lord.
auto watches.
He's not happy.
That's
I
right.
think he went to Sam.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. But more to the point of like there had been other murders around in the area because farmers kept so much cash on their properties that people had gone to take the cash and they had ultimately killed other farmers. Yeah. So so there's no clues. They don't know. They only have these 3 shoe prints. And then this is where the God incidents comes in, Mark.
See, this is where we need some sting music
Yeah.
or something. I will have better production next week.
This is
Okay.
underwhelming.
Go ahead.
But on May
Production
9th,
is underwhelming. You're doing a fine job telling the story. All right.
on May 9th, which is just about a month later, a tip came into Crime Stoppers from a man named Barry Kiles. Barry had been hired to clean an apartment in St. Paul for $23 and a bottle of vodka.
What?
Yeah. I think a general rule is if you're being paid in liquor, there's probably something there that you don't want to be around. But in the
$23 ain't
apartment,
enough. You got to give me booze too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
that's true. Not financial advice, but maybe just reconsider the agreement.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the apartment, Barry found a 100-year-old ornate Bible in what was a European language that he didn't know. When he opened up the Bible, and again, this is the man, Barry Kiles, who's cleaning an apartment in St. Paul for $23 and a bottle of vodka. He sees 2 $1,000 savings bonds in the Bible. And so he Googles the person's name on the savings bonds, and it's Earl Olander. And he sees there, when he Googles Earl's name, that there's a reward for information about his murder. So he calls Crime Stoppers and tells them about this Bible that he's found in this apartment. Now, St. Paul is, I think it was about 50 miles roughly from where Earl lived. So it was a little out of what they would have considered for the areas and sort of the areas of suspects because they were really looking in and around the community. But this now unlocked a whole opportunity to consider like this new clue that would
So there's this connection
ultimately
now
helping them.
between Earl and the 23 and all the liquor you can drink type thing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. The guy
So-
who is cleaning for $23 an hour. Okay.
Yep. And so the person that owned the apartment was named Edson Benitez. This is where the Crocs come in. Edson Benitez was a cook at a local Chili's. And so Edson's wife was really creeped out about the Bible. So when they moved and they hired Barry to clean it, she left the Bible at the house.
Oh, I see.
yeah.
So she left the Bible behind.
Yeah, she said the Bible gave her, it had too many spirits, is what she said.
Oh.
That's not fake.
mistake.
That's real.
Well, I think it could be fake, actually. But all right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Mark, exactly. So they take in Edson Benitez, and as they're arresting him, they're noticing the Crocs, and they're thinking, okay. And also, again, I think a lot of cooks wear Crocs, so.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
The
Cooks and
cook-croc
nurses.
connection.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that he doesn't have other shoes. But anyway, they arrest him with the exact shoes that he was wearing at the murder.
Oh, the shoes match up.
The shoes match up.
That's
Yeah.
so.
And so
Crocs
Edson,
match the crime.
So what? So, but we still have the Adidas and the other shoes.
you still have the other shoes. And all they have is Edson and his wife that has now left this Bible that has got Edson arrested. And so Edson tries to say that his friend gave him the Bible and that now his friend lived in Mexico and had left the week before, conveniently enough. And ultimately, they scare him a little bit by taking him down into the police station
Sure.
and holding him in custody. And
That's
so
the
he
move,
admits
right?
to everything.
Yeah. Wow. He
Yeah,
admits
he
to
admits
everything.
Oh,
And he
can't stand the
tells them-
pressure.
And what happened then? What did he say?
So he tells them that his friend, Renal Vergara, who was a painter in the area where Earl lived, Renal had wanted to perpetrate this crime on Earl, that Renal had found out that Earl had a lot of money. And so he
Sure.
wanted to go and
It's
take the money
Renal's.
from Earl.
It was Renal's idea.
Yeah.
Renal's fault.
Can you let him
Always
finish?
Renal's.
Okay, I'll let him finish. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
And so they, so he explains that, and he says, Renal sort of knew about Earl and also just the various people in the community because he was doing painting jobs in and around the area in which they lived, which was Carver County. So he also said that Ronald didn't want to drive his car to the crime because people knew of his car because he worked in and around that area. And so that was another reason why he brought Edson.
So as you see, Edson is the guy on the right, if you're watching on YouTube, of the two pictures. Ronald is the guy on the left. And so those are the two. So Ronald is the guy on the left, Edson is the guy on the right. So the guy that they're talking to is Edson.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's who the cops are talking.
Man on the right, yeah.
The gentleman. Like, he's a cold-blooded murderer, and Courtney calls him the gentleman on the right.
It's a really bad.
Okay, anyway, go ahead.
Oh my gosh. All right. So they bring in Ronald, and Ronald is wearing Adidas.
Oh,
I know,
love
Ronald. They both need new shoes.
they couldn't even change their shoes. They rip off all that money.
Exactly. And so he eventually Ronald admits to everything. They tell him, they have the information from Edson.
But then there's a third set of shoes.
I know. And so this is where a little bit of controversy comes in. So I'll just explain that Ronald and Edson take a plea. And so they had both matched their shoe prints to the shoe prints at the crime scene, and also cell phone data put them at Earl's house at the exact time that the crime was happening. So they plead guilty to one charge of murder in 2016, and they're both sentenced to 37 years in prison.
Wow.
Where the third shoe comes in is that Earl had neighbors who were the Bokers, and the Bokers were very much family to Earl. So almost, he was a grandfather to their kids, and very much sort of a patriarchal figure in their family. But they had been asking Earl to sell them land for a long time, and Earl would not do it, and said, everything will be worked out when I die. And then Earl dies. Well, the third pair of shoes was never solved for, but when Edson was at his sentencing, he said that the Bokers had crafted everything, that they had put everything together. Yeah. And that Ronald did this on the instruction of Bill Boker, who was his employer at the time. So that, and it remains that the third person was never arrested. They checked out Bill Boker and said that he wasn't involved, but that is,
Oh my
the unsolved
God.
part of this crime.
That is brutal.
Yeah.
So the third set is left out.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I know.
Yeah, somebody got away with it. Maybe the Bokers are
Did-
the Bokers are walking free today, is what
They
you're saying.
could
Well,
be-
because they actually changed their shoes out.
Yeah, they don't have the Avias on. Avias.
It was such a simple thing to do, right?
Did
So
the
wild
Bokers
idea.
get anything in the will?
That's a good question. I don't know. I didn't read that anywhere.
These
That's
are
a
the
really
things
great
you need to
question.
follow up.
I know,
on.
I know.
No,
Not only
maybe Kim can follow up. She's a news
I
person.
will. Not only if I wondered did they get away with murder, but also walked land as promised, right?
Yeah, no,
Mm.
it's
They
a
just
great
didn't want to wait
question.
for that land. Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of Earl's money came through inheritance. So he ran a profitable farm, but a lot of it was inheritance from years of family owning that farm. In fact, Earl was born 90 years prior on that farm.
Wow.
Yeah. So that sort of, they had stayed in that community and really built up their legacy in the area. So,
What a twisted tale.
yeah.
And they just did that on 2020 too?
They just did it on 2020,
Yeah.
but the God incidents was, I thought, really compelling.
Yeah, really, really good. I thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I know, this is a thing where Courtney takes everything really seriously. So she preps this and she's looking at all these different stories.
True,
Maybe I could
that's
do this
true.
one. Maybe I could do that one, blah, blah,
Sure.
blah. And then this kind of emerged sort of as a breaker, meaning that it seemed to be getting into the consciousness because of Friday night's 2020.
Yeah.
And so she felt she wanted to do that one.
And Courtney
That was
sent
a
me
good
all those
one.
photos. We didn't have
Oh,
any
thank
sound,
you.
Mark, but
Yeah.
Courtney had photos.
No, Courtney comes prepped. It's the host who didn't get the sound. I will have sound for
I
you. We
should
will
have
have
sent it to you. Actually, Trump brought up this murder in a political rally in 2016 around illegal immigration because Edson and Renal were both in the country illegally.
Oh.
Yeah,
There's
so
never been anything like
sort of
this.
like
Yeah, wow.
commandeered
I
this
thought you were going to say he
story.
was trying to take credit for it.
At this point, I wouldn't put it past him. But yeah.
You're awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Here every Monday with
Yeah.
another
Yes, thank
murder
you.
story. Courtney,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you, Courtney. What a great story.
Yeah, that was a
I mean,
great,
not
grim story. Yeah.
Not great for the farmer, but I think the moral of the story is if you're going to kill somebody, get rid of the shoes first thing.
Yeah, and don't go cheap on the cleanup effort.
Right?
Yeah,
That's right.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, there was
Bottle
like
of vodka is not
Yeah.
enough.
Maybe throw in a bottle of bleach.
a bottle of vodka and $23. Imagine doing anything for a bottle of vodka and $23. It's crazy.